My name is Melissa Lefebvre, and I work with the Canadian Wildlife Federation. A little bit about us on the next slide. So we're a charity, and we have over 300,000 supporters across Canada, so we're one of the biggest conservation organizations out there. And our mission, of course, is to make sure that wildlife is here for us and for future generations, and to make sure that Canadians are appreciating wildlife to the best that they can. So we have lots of different education programs out there aimed to educate people of all ages, so school children to the public, about wildlife issues in Canada. We also have a list of best practices that we put out so that people can know what are the best practices around different conservation issues in Canada. And we also support wildlife research, in-house research, as well as people doing their own research. So you're here today to learn about some Canadian native plants, and that's what we'll get going on in a couple of minutes. But just so you know, at any point in time, you can type a question into the chat if you have a question, and I may get to it during the presentation or afterwards, but please don't hesitate to ask questions. If you'd like, you can raise your hand and I can enable your microphone and you can ask a question that way, and that's a really fun way to interact, so don't hesitate to do that. You will see me grabbing my glasses on occasion just so I can read the comments better because they're in such fine print. Okay, so everybody's set, I think, and everybody can hear. So we'll carry on here with the Canadian native plants. So what are native anyways? Maybe you've heard this term being thrown around a lot lately. It's a pretty hot topic right now. Native plants, or regionally native plants, are simply plants that have been in the natural landscape for hundreds or even thousands of years. Most of the plants that you're buying at the nursery are imported from different countries. They're native to somewhere, but not native to Canada. And when we're talking about regionally native, we're talking very specific. So not just native to your province, but native to your very localized region. And at CWF, we always encourage people to plant these regionally native plants over, just a regular cultivar, but they're not always accessible, and that's okay. So native plants have co-evolved in the landscape for many, many years, and so they're better suited to wildlife and the local environment, and they have a lot of advantages. So one of the first big advantages with native plants is that they require far less maintenance. So if you place these things in, these native plants in the right spot, so with the right soil conditions, right moisture and light levels, they will require very little maintenance. So very little fertilizer, if none at all in some cases. And in the case of most native plants, you only need to water them when you're establishing them in your garden. So that's a really simple approach. The second advantage is that they are less susceptible to disease and pests and weather, just because, as I've mentioned, they've co-evolved in the natural landscape for hundreds and hundreds of years. So they're used to the local pests and the local wildlife that will use them. So in some cases, they may have developed defenses against pests. Of course, they're more weather resistant because they are in this climate. As you know, Canada has some pretty harsh winters, and our native plants can stand up really well to those winters, unlike other things that might require more mulch or maybe a bit of burlap over the top of throughout the winter. So, of course, another huge advantage that we love to talk about here at CWF is the ability of these native plants to meet the needs of local wildlife. So, native plants as food and shelter, you can't ask for better than that. When we're talking about nectar and pollen sources for our local wildlife, there are a bunch of examples here. So we have some willow trees, lupins, goldenrod. These are great food sources for wildlife. And I read a report last week saying that native bees are 4 times more likely to visit a native plant as opposed to a regular garden plant. So that's kind of cool. Fruit is another thing that native plants can provide. and nuts and seeds as well, especially if you leave the seed heads in your garden over winter. So instead of doing a fall cleanup, do your cleanup in the spring, and that way all the birds and little guys can come down and grab the seeds throughout the winter. Another great reason to leave your garden cleanup until the spring is that a lot of bees and different insects can overwinter in the stems of these stalks. And if you do it right, you can use native plants to provide food throughout the 4 seasons. So, or maybe not 4 seasons exactly, but mainly, of course, spring, summer, fall, and a little bit in the winter for, you know, the birds. So how do you know which plants are regionally native to you? And that's one of the biggest questions we get. And we try to help people out by giving them a starting point. On our website, you can visit wildaboutgardening.org, and you will be left with a big native plant encyclopedia. So it can give you an idea of what's native to your province. You know, if you have specific light conditions or moisture conditions, you can type those in as well, and we will come up with a list of plant suggestions for you there. So I really encourage you to check out wildaboutgardening.org and look at our native plant encyclopedia. Another super great way to find out which plants are native right to your region is to just contact a local naturalist group, and they will be able to tell you exactly what you can find in your area and what you should plant in your garden. Master gardeners are also great for this, and horticultural societies. As I said, native plants are becoming more and more popular, a little bit trendy right now. So a lot of these master gardeners and hort societies know exactly what you're talking about when you're asking about native plants. Another option, if you have a local university or college that has a strong environmental science program, they probably have a list of plants for you available as well. Of course, if you want to if you're a do-it-yourself person, you can go out in nature, grab your field guides, and see what's near you, right in your own area. If you have kind of a wooded area on your property and you want to put in some native plants, visit a similar environment. So visit a natural forest in your area and see what's there, and then try to duplicate it at home. So that's kind of a fun, you know, project that might take a few years for you. One thing you will want to look out for, though, of course, are invasive plants. So if you're seeing a plant a lot and it seems to be taking over an area, just be wary that it may not be native and may be actually an invasive plant. So a couple of things you should know. Native plants are gorgeous. Of course, when we're talking often about wildlife-friendly gardening and native plants, we're talking about how beneficial they can be to the environment and to wildlife, but we sometimes forget to mention that they're super beautiful, and you know, they can be just as pretty as any of the cultivars and different things that you see at the nursery. In fact, in other parts of the world, our native plants are more commonly found in gardens as opposed to here where they already exist. I guess it's one of those things where you take what you have and what you see regularly for granted. But anyways, they're becoming more and more popular in our nurseries, and if you're having a hard time finding them at your nurseries, just put in a request. Just ask if they carry any native plants, and the trend will move that way. So of course, native plants can be used in any kind of gardening style that you like. People often think of weedy, unruly wildflower meadows when they think about wildlife-friendly gardening or native plant gardening, but it doesn't have to be that way. Here are a couple of examples of certified gardens that we have, and one of them is our pollinator garden here at the head office, and you can see you can do kind of whatever you like with it. It's yours to play with. So now we'll just look at a few examples of different plants from across Canada. And I've taken care to include many plants that are Canada. So some of them, you'll see little range maps, and you'll be able to tell whether or not the plant is found in your area. So this first one that we'll look at is blue flag iris. It's super pretty. It's, I guess, more of an easterly plant here, but I'm sure there is a western equivalent of iris. And of course, so if you have a little moist spot in your yard that you'd like to plant something in, irises are always beautiful. Short-lived bloom, but definitely worth it. Here's another example. We have purple prairie clover. So this one's kind of mid-ranged in Canada, and this one can tolerate some pretty hefty sun. So if you've got a sunny spot, or if you want to create a drought garden, this is a really super option. It's really pretty, and it kind of has cool texture to it. It's like a little spike, as you can see. Solomon seal, there's many different types of Solomon seal that are native to Canada. You can pick one that you like a lot. This one is pretty neat. It's feathery false Solomon seal. And you see it has a pretty little cluster of white flowers that turn into some really cool berries that kind of stick around for most of the season. And this is a really neat plant too if you've got a moist area again, or even a dry area. And I always say, even if a plant has specific requirements, you can experiment a little. I mean, you might not expect the same kind of results, but it's kind of fun to play around and see what can work and what can't work. Sometimes the microclimate of your yard, so the specific little area in your yard, matters more than the zone or what have you. So, you know, even if something is meant to be in moist soil, you can try it in a drier soil, and you might have different results, but it's kind of the fun of being a gardener. Here is bloodroot. So this is one of the first little spring plants that pop up, and this is a fun one to include in a woodland garden. Here we have wild columbine, a really show-stopping plant. It's in bloom right now in our demonstration gardens, and people walk by and they always want to know, oh my gosh, what is that really cool plant? So wild columbine, and it has the little seeds develop kind of midsummer, and they're little black seeds, and you can kind of shake them out of the pod really easily, so it's an easy one to share and collect seeds with. Lilies are really gorgeous as well. I think we all know about daylilies and tiger lilies and all these, you know, popular varieties that we buy commonly at the garden shop. But we have a lot of really cool native lilies too. And here's one, wood lily. It's native across Canada. Super pretty, really gorgeous plants. Cardinal flower is a fun one for hummingbirds, actually. And this one is more of an easterly range, but it is a really cool plant. We have some in our blog bed here at the front office, and yeah, hummingbirds just flock to it. It's really a fun plant to watch. So milkweed, of course, I'm sure you guys have heard lots about milkweed recently and its ability to be a host food plant for monarch butterflies. This is a wonderful plant. There are 14 different species across Canada. So again, find the one that's native to your region and try to include it in your garden, or if it volunteers itself, like it does, and I'm sure in most places, common milkweed is, you know, kind of it shows up where it will. We just kind of let it grow wherever it wants to grow, and the flowers are actually really, really pretty, and they smell amazing too. So it's all about shifting perspective away from thinking, oh, it's a weed, it's showing up where I don't want it, into, oh, you know, it's actually really pretty and welcome in my garden because it's so useful to different wildlife species and it smells great. So it's, you know, benefit to you, benefit to wildlife. Wild bergamot is another one that's fantastic to include in your garden. Again, it's native across Canada, so great option for everybody here. Bee balm is probably one that you're familiar with, the bright red flower. So these guys look really cool, kind of midsummer. They are great for bees and butterflies and hummingbirds as well. They have those big tube-shaped flowers, so a lot of little wildlife get use out of these ones. Bottle gentian is a really cool plant, and I'd never seen it before I started working here, but it has these nifty little, the bloom looks like it's actually a bud that's about to open, but it never does. It kind of stays closed, and it's just a really vibrant purple. These photographs don't do it justice, but this is a really neat native plant. New England aster is another really fantastic plant as well. A lot of us see it in fields as we're driving by. You see kind of little spots of purple in the field when you're driving, and kind of late summer, early fall. And we might think, oh, it's weedy or whatever, but when you do include it in your garden, it adds really gorgeous color. And the stem and the leaves, if you kind of crush them a little bit, it lets off this kind of nice lemon scent almost, and they're just really pretty, and pollinators love them, so I think they're great. Marsh marigold is a really cool plant too. So this one is definitely more of a moist soil plant. You'll see it in different bogs and things like that across Canada. And it blooms for just a couple weeks, but it's really pretty. It's kind of a nice alternative to a violet if you have kind of a wet spot that you want to fill in. Goldenrod, not to be confused with ragweed, is a really, really great native plant for pollinators specifically. And, you know, a lot of us think, oh, it looks kind of weedy and it looks like ragweed, but it can add great color into the fall in your garden. And there's so many different varieties too, so you really can choose which ones you like best and which ones you want to include. And these always attract the coolest little pollinators. So if you have some goldenrod near you or in your garden, just pay attention to who visits, because you'll be surprised how many species visit goldenrod. Wild nodding onion is a really nifty plant too. You can eat it if you want, and it does spread. So you know, the stuff that you pull up, you can kind of incorporate into a salad, and it tastes just like an onion basically. And the flowers are really pretty, and again, great for pollinators. Bumblebees, all kinds of bees will love to visit this little one. And this is native mostly across Canada, with the exception of a few provinces. But there are other types of wild onions that can be planted in your garden. Gives a pretty kind of purplish pink little teeny tiny hanging flower. Yarrow is a good one if you have a really dry spot. So again, for people wanting to create a drought garden, this is a great option, and the bloom lasts, it really holds for a long time. For trying to think, here we have it in our demonstration gardens, and I think it starts to bloom end of July or beginning of August, and then it goes right into September and even into October. And the white flowers kind of turn this purplish color, and it's really, really pretty. Pasque flower is another really one of those crowd pleasers. Super pretty, super unique looking. It's kind of fuzzy, and there's a couple of different species. There's one of them that is kind of a darker purple that's really pretty, and there's a lighter one that is, I think, native to Ontario and probably many other provinces, but I'm thinking very locally right now. But a great show-stopping plant in our gardens. This is another one that gets a lot of attention when it blooms in the spring. So it's in bloom now, actually. Everybody at the office wants to know, what is this plant and where can I get it? So its popularity, I think, is spreading because it's become available in a few nurseries right around our head office. So it's kind of a neat thing. Pearly everlasting is another really cool plant that you can incorporate into a native plant garden or a wildlife friendly garden. Again, it's native across Canada, and it has kind of like a heatherish green-gray foliage, and it's really unique looking actually. So it's a fun one to include, and it's a great host plant for certain butterflies too. So if you want a little white bloom in your garden with a different kind of texture, you can kind of see actually in the photograph underneath how different it looks compared to the surrounding plants. So it really sticks out. Water avens is another really pretty plant if you want something that isn't too tall, and it's a good ground cover actually. It has really gorgeous little blooms, and they last for maybe 3 to 4 weeks right around this time of the year. But then after the bloom fades, the foliage really holds its shape, and it gets even more lush as the season goes on. So it's a really great ground cover and adds texture to your garden all year. Looking at a few shrubs that you can include that are some great native shrubs, dogwoods of course. There's many different species again all across Canada. And these shrubs are really gorgeous. They're easy to prune. You don't have to worry too much about, killing them or anything when you want to prune them. So you can let them grow as big as you like, or you can keep them small and contained. And what's neat about dogwoods is that the twigs are usually pretty interesting. So you can get some kind of red colored twigs or greeny colored twigs. And then it will have a really pretty flower too. As you can see here, here's one example. It gets these little umbels of flowers, so whole little groups of flowers. And then they turn into berries. And then the berries, depending on the species, can vary in color too. So there are red ones, white ones, blue ones. So you can, select the best one for you in your garden, in your area. And they're wonderful all year round, providing visual interest all year round. So that's always fun. And then moving on to cherries, I've got choke cherry up here just because it is native across Canada, but there are many different types of cherry trees. So they don't get terribly tall for the most part. Of course, there are some exceptions. And they do get really beautiful smelling flowers in the spring. And then, of course, they provide cherries, feeding all kinds of wonderful birds and different animals in that way. Serviceberry, there are many, many species of serviceberry and found across the country again, and they smell fantastic. So right now, if you took a walk outside in our demonstration gardens, one of the things that you would notice are the blooms of the serviceberries right now and how amazingly delicious they smell. And then in just a few short weeks, they will have their berries. And those berries are just devoured by a lot of birds that we have here. I think the catbird is one of the biggest ones that just loves the serviceberries at our head office anyways. Viburnum species are fantastic to include in your garden. They have really cool foliage. They have really pretty flowers and berries as well. So there's like the photo you see here with the blueberries is, I think it's nanny berry. There's some red berries, so that's a high bush cranberry, and really fantastic little shrub to include in your garden. And non-natives can be beneficial as well. So I've been talking a lot about native plants just because that is the title of the talk, but when we're talking about wildlife-friendly gardening, some non-natives can be incredibly beneficial. So it's definitely worth looking into. Having a few annuals in your garden can provide, some stopover places for different pollinators. So if you have a spot, sometimes it's a challenge with all these beautiful perennials to find, to have like a succession of blooms. So to have something in bloom at all times. And for the times when there isn't anything in bloom, annual plants can provide great nectar for wildlife as well. Also, heirloom plants are a really great option as well for wildlife-friendly gardens because they are plants that have been bred for hundreds of years. And so, again, the local animals are used to these kinds of plants because they've been in the landscape for hundreds of years, in most cases anyways. So, all this to say native plants are wonderful, but some non-natives are beneficial as well. So where do you get these plants? Well, you can take from local seeds. So if you're on a hike or you're out and about and you see some seed heads from native plants, you can grab a few of the seeds. Just don't grab them all because we do want to, leave them there so that they can perpetuate in the wild. We do recommend that you don't take transplants from the wild because the idea is that you are disturbing habitat if you're doing this, and it's kind of counter to what you're trying to do. You're trying to support wildlife, and if you are taking transplants from the wild, you are in fact degrading habitat, so totally counter to what you want to do. Although it is tempting, I understand the temptation, but there is a better way. You can definitely also purchase plants from native plant nurseries. There's a lot of nurseries now that specialize in native plants. So all you have to do is type into a Google search your area plus native plant nursery, see what comes up. Our website as well, we have a really great list, so that can be another great starting point. So again, with thewildaboutgardening.org, and I'll show you in a slide or two some of the resources on our website. So we have a few gardening programs as well that you may or may not be aware of. We have a wonderful community of online gardeners, so wildlife-friendly gardeners, people who are interested in organic gardening or gardening with native plants. Everyone from beginners, total beginners, to complete, experts. So there's an online forum for you guys where you can go on there and ask questions and share stories and photos, and get lots of help there from a network of other like-minded gardeners. And we also have a certification program. So if you are going to go through the trouble, or if you have already gone through the trouble of including native plants in your garden and making your space wildlife friendly, you can apply for certification. And it's totally free to do that. So I would encourage you to check that out for sure. And you can do that online at wildabuckgardening.org. We have a native plant encyclopedia there, so that will get you started. We have our supplier list too, another way to get you started. And we also have a really great quarterly newsletter. It goes out 4 times a year and will tell you all about seasonal gardening tips and wildlife-friendly gardening tips. So if you have any questions, please type them in right now, or you can always contact me. I'll leave my email as the last slide. But this is to say that we love our supporters, and thank you so much for coming out to our webinar today. You can support us in a lot of different ways, not just donations. Although we are fully supported by our members, a lot of people think we are maybe affiliated with government, but that isn't the case. All of the wonderful projects we do are because of our members, so thank you for that. And just tell your family and friends about our resources, request our materials, suggest webinar topics or any topics that interest you, and we want to make sure that you guys are happy, so please feel free to do that. You can contact me at this email address at any time, but please type some questions in and I will do my best to answer them. So I'll just get my glasses out and see if anybody's been asking. So somebody's asking if this PowerPoint will be available on the website, and the answer is yes. Eventually this whole webinar will be up on the website for you to view. I can't tell you exactly when that is, but if you do email me, I can give you the email address, or the web address where you can visit. So that's one way to do it. If you'd like, I can enable your microphones if you want to ask a question outright. All you have to do is kind of raise your hand, and I think you can virtually raise your hand actually at the top of the screen. Yes, there is a little status button and you can do that, or you can just type. Okay, so somebody's asking about Solidago canadensis, and is it invasive, and is it better to plant it directly in the ground? I guess it depends on what you want to achieve. If you want to have a nice little goldenrod meadow, then I would definitely recommend putting it right into the ground. If you do want to contain it, container is definitely a good route to go. Just make sure that you're having a container that's deep enough, and then once it gets crowded, you probably will want to divide it just so that it has a bit of space and it isn't overcrowding. It's not invasive in the sense that it's an invasive species and it's disruptive to local wildlife. Sometimes we confuse terms like that. It is, I don't want to say invasive, but it will take over. It's an easy spreader, I guess you could say. And it typically does grow kind of almost all by itself in a field. Not entirely, but you will definitely have a dominant, goldenrod dominant meadow if that's what you want. But yeah, definitely container garden is one way to go for sure. Somebody has a question about an invasive thistle, and is there any way to choke it out? I haven't had any experience with this one directly, but I have used horticultural vinegar for some invasive plants, and that does work in some cases One of my colleagues actually used it on poison ivy that was on her property, and it did work for that. But you've got to kind of clip it down and inject the horticultural vinegar right into the stump with a little needle, and that can work sometimes. We have a lot of challenges with some invasive shrubs, and we're working on a few different methods to get rid of those. So if we have any success with that, we will publish that on the website, and you can keep afloat that way. Yeah, sorry, I don't have any specific recommendations with the thistle other than to try the horticultural vinegar. That might be one option. Just Google horticultural vinegar or go to your local nursery and ask them for it, and they should have something that will help you out. And that's a nice, gentle way of getting rid of invasive species without using super harsh chemicals. All right, well, if that's all, then I thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you have a great, enjoy the rest of your day. And if you have any questions, just feel free to contact me. Thanks a lot.